Hiya, friends. Server meshing is arguably the most important thing in Star Citizen's development. It's a big deal. It is going to take a lot of the load off of the game and allow for AI to run better. It's going to make a lot more players be able to be in a closer area. It's going to allow for multiple star systems to function in a relatively smooth environment. It's very important, and we haven't gotten to get many face-to-face or camera-to-face just straight up explanations of it other than CitizenCon a year and a half ago. So today we're getting our first ISC about server meshing. This is good news. Not only because obviously we need to hear about server meshing, but because once things start showing up on ISC and the monthly report, generally they've started to enter production. And we've seen the server meshing mentioned on the monthly reports now. So what I'm getting is that it is left or started to move past the R&D phase of figuring out theoretically how things work and designing it on the engineering side. And now it sounds like they're starting to incorporate it into the actual game servers, what's that thing, the DGS, and ultimately learning how it will work with PES. But we'll see what they do. Either way, haven't gotten to see too much on this yet. Some people have been disappointed. Some people feel like they've been informed. I'm hoping we just get more info on kind of what their thinking is with it. I'm sure it'll be interesting. Let's get into it.
Meetings.
Also, by the way, I know some people don't like the volume and how loud everything is. I'm manually controlling the volume, so I might not get it right every time. Just a heads up.
Down the most exciting element in all of game development. Now, everyone that has ever made a game will tell you that it's gathering in a meeting room and talking about stuff that's really their very favorite part of the process.
I made a
Yes,
game.
The best days in game dev are the ones full of meetings, and the best behind-the-scenes content is always incredibly meeting-focused. Now, imagine a summit, an entire week dedicated to hashing out the plans for the next month, quarter, year, and sometimes beyond. Yes, exciting stuff, I know.
I wonder who's doing all these pictures for this stream.
Beyond.
They're having some fun sneaking these in. Little references here and there. I didn't know the last one with the hair, but this is clearly E.T. Nice.
Yes, exciting stuff, I know. All kidding aside, summits are an essential element of game dev we don't often get to explore. So when we heard that the core technology, network, and engine teams were coming together to discuss how best to move from persistent entity streaming into tackling the immense server meshing, we figured you might just indulge us in trying something a little different this week. So we set up some cameras and grabbed a few willing participants just minutes after completing their second day of summits to get a candid, unfiltered look inside one of the most important Star Citizen summits of 2023. And let me tell you, January's been full of them. So to spare you the full effect of 5 days of meetings, we'll be spreading these out over the next few weeks while continuing our look at content being developed for 3.19 and beyond. So, after just a little ado, we present to you the Server Meshing Strike Team Q1 2023 Development Summit Post-Meeting Review.
Oh boy.
Name pending.
CIG's always great at naming things.
Do you need me to look into the camera or
stick with
right? Got you. Okay.
Meshing Summit Day 2.
Just stick it in your pocket.
Okay. Oh.
Inside your.
I am in this one.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't know what you'd written.
I wrote Benny B.
Benny.
I can do this if they're watching me. Go away. Go away, please. Forever.
Look at all these geniuses coming together.
What are you guys doing here?
Well, I'm visiting the UK to discuss server meshing with the rest of the team.
We're doing a summit to try and plan for the next deliveries of Pyro and server meshing.
So summits in general, especially this one, is really where all the teams connect because, you know, with the pandemic, a lot of people have been working from home. So summits become really important because it allows us to reconnect together. So we meet in one location. This time it's in the UK. And we have representative of every team. So most of the leads in every team.
It's the first time that we're meeting as a team for a lot of us. A lot of people joined the company. A lot of people joined.
This is sorry, I just gotta take a second here and think about how like this is something that every company must do. You guys all work at big companies, you know. People travel and meet. There's like business trips. That's why we did planes besides military. Anyways, Ubisoft, Bethesda, I want to say 343. So that kind of hurts right now. CD Projekt Red, I don't know, take a AAA studio. And like they're doing stuff like this, but we never get to see it. And it's just, besides the fact that I'm obsessed with what they're going to talk about here, I do really appreciate getting to see them going about their actual work as a company, as opposed to just the game developer entity, you know?
Joined those teams and they've never met so far. So it's just great. Like we have someone from Korea, Montreal, we have people from all over, you know. So it's also a strong aspect of the summits.
This is a great opportunity for us. This is the first time ever we've had the strike team all in one place, all at one time. This is our kind of Avengers Assemble moment for server meshing. This is the time we get three.
Pretty sure I've heard or maybe seen Roger Godfrey a while back, I think. Pretty important person, though, as far as I remember.
Core teams together to actually work out the final nuances of the architecture to build this system.
There are many teams are involved, and to get the teams on the same page.
Chris was in the CitizenCon demonstration.
Yeah, we're just building everyone in a room, talk for 1 week, aligning our goals that we can just go out and crank at the code without less communication than we would have without it. Many people are already working together for a long time, so it's make communication easier if you know each other and getting forward to agreeing on goals. Based on that, we can more efficiently execute toward a goal, because especially in a global company where time zones are, it's kind of hard. Sometimes I think about software development is like an oil tanker, where it runs good into one direction, but as soon as you want to change direction, it takes a long time, because we need to get everyone has a slightly different idea of how stuff works, and to get everyone really understand how stuff should work on a more detailed level. There's a lot of work and align it.
Once everybody's put their stuff in, we plan it out. We discuss approaches, strategies on how we're going to intertwine our work.
Ooh,
and
pages of stuff. I'm assuming they don't care about us knowing any of this stuff, but it's always fun to see what they're looking at internally compared to us.
This allows us to be on the same page so that we can then work together to achieve a very specific objective and not just be building technology for fun.
Is that my monitor? This looks very saturated.
The objective of this summit is to flesh out the exact
Yo, Microtech Data Storage mission, anybody?
roadmap for server meshing based on all of the work we've been doing for PES. So PES is the state of the simulation that's now persisting. That's great. It's behind us. Now we need to actually server mesh.
The major goal of this
That must feel
summit
so good to
is
say.
to reflect back on what we've done and see how we can do it better for the next milestones on server meshing. What did we forget? What can we do better for the next milestones on server meshing?
Is that a jump point concept?
What did we forget? What can we do better? How can we better organize ourselves so we keep moving forward and we don't do what we've had to do a lot for the previous delivery, which is think and create as you go. And there will always be a little bit of this in game development. It's normal. You need to have this creativity. You need to keep that. But we also need to get a little bit better at planning and anticipating some of the challenges.
The goal of the summit is really to flesh out the steps to get there with the objective to ship a second solar system. That's really the primary objective.
What do you call a jump point for you? Because we are talking a lot of the low technical stuff.
That's what I want to know. Some of a secondary goal is talking about.
Goodbye. Secondary goal would be
Dismissed.
talking about the low technical groundwork to enable features like jump point.
That's what we want to hear. I think. Oh my gosh. Look at the freaking contrast.
This is day 2,
Isn't
I
that
think, of the
saturated?
summit. So we've done a first retrospective of all of the PES work. issues we've encountered, problems we've had, things we want to avoid. And so this is officially the first day of actually digging into meshing.
On our second day, we talked about, what did I talk about?
Day 2, we have drunk so much coffee.
Day 2 has been super great in that we've aligned a lot of our
See a
different
hydro homie out
roadmaps.
there.
Every team gets to have their own sort of view on the project, and I think today we really came together as this is the critical path that we need to achieve. Everything else is gravy, but we have the critical path is really clearly identified, which is a big deal in the size of this project.
Server meshing, the plan for persistent entity streaming and server meshing, they were designed to be done simultaneously at the same time. This is going back to late 2020. We couldn't do that. It just wasn't practical in the end. So we had to devote all our attention to doing persistent entity streaming.
That would have been so painful if they had tried to do both in the same patch. I don't like. Holy crap! We would have been destroyed. Utter nonsense.
This was in during lockdown, so we did all of this while we're all working from home. We're now in a position with the server meshing stuff. And I've kind of lost my train of thought. I was going to say something really good and I forgot it was.
Yeah, we know what the critical.
Yeah, I can't honestly. I've never worked on this kind of stuff, networking stuff, but I imagine there are some people who are watching this. Maybe there are who have, and so I can't put context as to how hard that must have been working on PES while none of them were actually in the same office together. But that must have been such a pain.
Path is, which is that's the most important thing in these technology projects because they get to be very large. And so sometimes you lose track of what the actual objective is. And our objective is to get a second solar system online as fast as possible, not just to build server meshing technology, but it's to get the second solar system online. Now we have a rough roadmap of the different steps.
So rather than separating those two, he's really drawing the emphasis between the two. We are trying to do server meshing, but really this is about Pyro as well. And I guess kind of confirming for us that a lot of people say, hey, release Pyro without server meshing. Just have there be, just don't do two separate servers or have them be completely different instances or whatnot. Benoit here seems to be saying, no, it has to be this way. Maybe he'll go into more detail about why.
We need to do to get our second solar system online. And so now we start arguing about the later steps and the strategies after that.
We're tackling a lot of really difficult problems at the moment. Server meshing is one of the toughest problems to solve in video game development, and we've gotten to the point now we're getting the persistent entity streaming to the point where it's shippable. That then kind of opens up lots of opportunities to be able to get this quite impressive system built. So yeah, there's good stuff happening here. So the first phase is the separation out of the replication layer. That unlocks the Pyro jump gate stuff. That also unlocks the server meshing stuff. We've been talking about the zones and authority, but you're much better off talking to a proper engineer about this kind of stuff. But yeah, we're getting a good handle on this stuff. We're getting a good plan for delivery.
We have delivered the PES technology, and now we need to build on what we built there, defining more sub-steps to go out to actually bring Pyro in the hands of the player.
This is a really complicated system, and we had to learn how to do it. There's been a lot of experimentation, there's been a lot of invention. When we had our initial plan at the beginning of 2021, late 2020, there was a lot of...
Okay, that's kind of key. When we had our initial plan at the end or late 2020, actually kind of lines up a little bit with, and this is my theory, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've been of the idea that they had an idea for server meshing back in like 2017-ish, 2018, when they initially set on they've been talking about this for a while, 2015, probably 2014. But I remember in 2017 or so was when it felt like they started to make a line towards server meshing. They got OCS done and they were ready to start working up that hill towards server meshing. And it seemed like the concept changed around there somewhere, 2019-ish, where they realized they needed to go with separating the simulation, the data in the replication layer from the actual game being simulated, which we learned about at CitizenCon last year. But what he's saying kind of lines up. If they had refactored that, added the replication layer into the concept, and started up again, obviously that's part of the R&D phase, just kind of refactoring everything, but getting to the point where they got their concept from 2020 on and then worked on it lines up with what he's saying. Let's see where he goes with this.
There's stuff in there that we knew we had to build but didn't quite know how to build it. When we actually came to actually build those interesting systems, we had to we found problems. We found stuff that was never expected. We found limitations of the technology. We found limitations of what the hardware could do. So we very much had to get our engineers to invent our way around the problem. So this is very much a feedback. This is a learning experience to figure out how we need to build server meshing.
So to be honest, it sounds like the replication layer thing was just one in a line of steps of roadblocks. And I think that's also part of what gets missed in these last couple of years. We are all sitting here thinking, oh yeah, they're talking about server meshing. They've been working on server meshing for 2 years. It's on the progress tracker and all that progress is going. That was R&D. Like that's what he's telling us. They were pushing the technology, figuring out what didn't work, going back to the drawing board, coming up with new ideas and then applying them. And that's kind of what they do with a lot of this stuff. In this alpha phase, features, PES stuff, even the way that they are releasing ships, sometimes they do that. So not surprising to hear, but that's at least some good insight into the production process timeline of server meshing.
Key thing that we're doing with this is server meshing is also tied into the delivery of the jump gates to get to Pyro. It's not quite the same problem, but it also kind of is. When you actually do a jump to get to Pyro, we have to transfer authority from the Stanton DGS to the Pyro DGS. What we want to do, of course, is have multiple DGS per star system, but we're separating the actual jump gate stuff from the actual server meshing stuff so that we get to the point so we can actually assure Pyro's delivery, and whilst we worry about the actual server meshing delivery. So we're actually, those are now, from our perspective, two different problems. So very early on, we're going to be tackling what we're calling separation of the replication layer out from the DGS. So that's the thing which replicates all our data. It allows communication. It's a single source of truth in memory for the state of the entire universe at any given time. That's going to get separated out from the DGS that currently holds all the fun simulation stuff that's happening at the moment. That's a first key step, both to delivering Pyro, all the technical backend for the jump gates, and it's also our kind of first big step for server meshing.
So that's the concept coming into realization, is that separation of the DGS and the replication layer. And it's going to be fun to talk about this because people are always like, oh, you're going between two systems. It's just a fancy loading screen. And we start to get down into the depths of like, what's the loading screen? What is it loading? Is it the DGS? Does that matter? What if it was the same instance? Different instances, like it's semantics really, but I don't know. I think I'm getting more confusing than the video is.
So that's what we're going to be tackling initially.
Oh, is that the spirit?
Yeah, so that's what we're going to be tackling initially.
Get a little spirit drop. This is like how they used to tease the Corsair before it came out, like 5 months before it came out. They would just show it flying in the distance so we could see its silhouette and nothing else. Wow, it's cool looking terrain.
The design that we're putting in now, we've had for a couple of years, and we've been refining it over that time. And the time we're building persistent entity streaming, have been bits and pieces of server meshing on there that we needed to get done. But we're now in a position now to really, now we've got persistent entity streaming down there as a kind of foundational piece. That then opens up the opportunity to really kind of get this design that we've had, that we've honed, to really knuckle down and actually get it dashed out and get the first version out. Static server meshing, that is. This is a piece of work that's going to last for quite a long time. There'll be ongoing stuff for quite a while.
Moving to the goal, even 5-6 years ago when we started with object container streaming, where we started to split up the game into smaller chunks, and then moving from there, having stuff only partially loaded on the clients, having stuff partially loaded on the server, and then decoupling the persistent state. And now the next steps are to decouple it more into more logical units to execute the code, which actually server meshing is. So yeah, it's really a continuation. And over time, the more you understand of the problem, the more you know what you need to do. So that's why every year kind of, most likely we have a summit once per year on this topic for the last N years too.
They must get so tired of the whole, oh, it's always 2 years away thing, because you get like all these other people who are working on parts of the game, missions and features and ships and all this stuff that's like very in everyone's face, and that's kind of what gets everyone's attention and emotions going. You get angry about a ship doing this. You get happy about the feature doing this. You get frustrated that this patch was delayed, and all of the time in the background, these people are working on server meshing, talking about how like, yeah, we made progress on this stuff this year, but it's still 2 years away. It's still this far away. We're still a year and a half away. We got these milestones. And they still get all of like the same sort of jokes that everybody else does. When in reality, I bet they're so tired of working on server meshing at this point. That's such a long time. I guess that's what you guys do, you programmers, wizards.
We find what we do and what exactly we need to do after we got the step near.
That's the critical path to the first step. But after that is how we get to the actual end game, which is the dynamic mesh. So we all have our views on this, but now it's really, we're getting into the gray view. Like, how is this gonna work? Here's cases we have to deal with. Like, what if a player dies into a jump tunnel, right? What happens to the missions, right? What happens to the persistent state of these tunnels? Do they exist? Do they not exist? Do they respawn? So we talk about not necessarily the gameplay aspect of it, like I'm giving you guys an example now, but really the technology aspect of it. So do these zones keep existing? How do we reuse them? Do we want to reuse them? What's the effect on PES, right, for these zone transition subsystems? So that's been the highlight of it has been really about identifying that and then how we make it dynamic.
Oh my. Don't show me.
How we make it dynamic.
Do not show me clouds like this and then not have them at Pyro, okay? We saw these at CitizenCon last year, and it seems like maybe they're kind of the next step. But these like layers of clouds that we keep seeing in Pyro, I hope they come to Stanton. I hope they come to the game in general, because they're freaking gorgeous. Ooh. Hold up. They're doing a little spirit and a whole CTs. So this is actually the bigger version of the whole A. This one can't land on planets when it has all of its boxes, and it also is going to require another step up in the cargo refactor for them to add, I think, 13 SCU boxes. So this ship is very important because it kind of is going to usher in the next version of cargo hauling. And I'm thinking 320. Whatever patch ends up coming in the third quarter, I think is when we might see it, but still no confirmation.
The best thing which came out of today is...
And I don't know what that was. This is just a random space station. This looks just like space stations in Stanton. Maybe it's themed a certain way and that's why it's dark. Not sure why this popped up though. You can definitely see where some of this stuff hasn't popped in for rendering. Or actually, maybe those are shanty towns. They have those in Pyro.
The best thing which came out of today is basically the same which comes again out of Summits. It's to get alignment, that everyone gets the same idea into their mind in a detailed level. This is, that's general alignment. That's not.
After day 2, I think the biggest question is still how we're gonna operationalize the dynamic mesh. And so, we still have these big statements like, oh, we're gonna request additional DGSs and then assign them. Now we're gonna have to flesh out, how do we request them? How do we know they're ready? How do we assign them? How does that actually work? Is gonna be the key to the next steps.
That will then be built over the coming months. And of course, it's not just us as well as the strike team. We have, 50 or so game teams that are also going to have to take this code. And then...
Hold up. I thought nobody was working on Star Citizen.
Have to adapt all their functionality that they have across Star Citizen to use all this cool technology. So yeah, this is the start of server meshing in its current form. In our case, it's cramming a lot of developers into a...
Literally, like every time you see one of those comments on videos that have nothing to do with back-end tech where people are like, why are they doing this? Work on back-end tech. Please just send them this.
Room, closing the doors, getting to drink coffee and talking a lot. It's very much a list of stuff that we've got to determine. We basically have a list of stuff that we need to nail down. Open questions, miscommunications between teams. We need to get these 3 key teams all aligned, all pointing in the same direction. So they all fully understand what it is they're building. We resolve the technical niggles that we have between these teams, so they really understand what it is they're making. We correct problems before they happen, so there's misunderstandings between the interfaces between the teams that can be quite expensive to fix. having a summit like this allows us to fix these problems in advance and fix them much more cheaply. So yeah, we need to just, this is what gives us the solid plan that we're going to be working to for the next year. So touch wood, we're in a position now to finally push on and get the very first version, which is static server meshing, in place. We're bound to find other problems on this journey, but we can invent our way. We know we can invent our way around these problems. So yeah, we may occasionally get slowed down, but we don't get, we're still determined to deliver this.
I like hearing from Mr. Godfrey. So I'm gonna let Jared do his outro, but I just want to make a couple comments first. This was an interesting one, I think, mainly because it is all of the people who are leading the server meshing teams, and it's at a point where they are starting to do the production parts of it, but they don't yet know the gameplay ramifications of it. So we missed out on, I think, a lot of the more interesting sort of applications and scenarios that we all want to hear about, because they simply don't have them. It would be the people who are working with the game features teams, the mission features teams, the locations teams, that would be probably giving us the more juicy bits. Benoit did get into a little bit of detail there, and I did appreciate that. Hopefully, as we go further on in the year and we get more updates on server meshing, we start to hear a little bit more realistically about like how this, or at least theoretically, how this affects specific points in the game. It also, I think, would have been nice to just hear kind of what is... They told us the challenges that they face, but not really where exactly they are. So like last year, we heard that PES was working in a closed environment, and then we got an update in ISC, I think 3 months later, where Benoit came on and talked a little bit more about the challenge they're facing. This feels almost like prior to that letter from the chairman we got last May. So hopefully in the next month or two, we can hear that like they've got something going on in the office where they can actively test it, and we can get a little more feedback on that. But I'm not really that disappointed. I'm not disappointed. I'm pretty neutral on it. I think this was a solid status update. I think this is a good way for them to explain to the general population that's watching inside Star Citizen what it is they're actually trying to do with server meshing. Because as of now, it's basically been content creators, Spectrum and Reddit folks, and occasionally somebody offhand on one of these episodes just sort of talking about server meshing. But for those who have all joined in the last year, I think this will probably add a lot more context. It's very important. It's been very difficult. And it's probably the single biggest roadblock to Star Citizen really reaching its potential. So it's cool to finally see the faces behind this feature out in front of the camera, talking about it with some confidence, explaining it with their own know-how, and starting to bring us into the circle of here's what's happening with server meshing. It's the beginning of probably a pretty decent sized road. I wouldn't expect to see this in testing until December at the earliest. But this is a start. I'm glad we finally got it.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that PES is not just the technical harbinger we all knew it would be. It was also the critical experience necessary to review, amend, and evolve existing plans for server meshing with the lessons learned along the way. That it is a variety of technologies, including the long-awaited jump points that will enable the addition of Pyro and star systems beyond. And that people, really, boy, do they really love to just sit down for an interview just 5 minutes after sitting in intense all-day meetings.
Got nowhere to be.
And let me tell you, I owe some people some dinners.
Kidding.
Now, we'll be back with more traditional ISC features and return visits to the Meshing Strike Team Summit in the coming weeks. And don't forget to keep your eyes on the robertsspaceindustries.com website and socials for information on the pending release of Alpha 318. It's got salvage, cargo, persistence, and more. And it seems there's a new Scorpius. The things you'll learn on Twitter.
Got a lot of
For
people
Inside
excited.
Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee, and we'll see you all here next week.
I got one more thing I want to say before we go. With PES kind of being the first major piece of tech that they've proven they can do, I think that was PES, besides object container streaming and a couple other things we've seen, I think persistent entity streaming is like one of the first times people are seeing one of those lofty goals of Star Citizen actually getting maybe not done, but proven. I think it's given people hope. It's given people a lot more to be excited about, and it's introducing new features to the game, salvage, cargo hauling, and all that kind of stuff. But what we're also seeing now is mission teams coming on to Star Citizen Live and talking about how they can use persistent entity streaming for cooler missions, or how the flight team or the locations team, or just in general how teams that are doing things like mining and salvage missions on the monthly reports are now starting to change their tune to match, these are our capabilities with PES. That could be something we see with server meshing next year. If they end up getting the static version in, we might not be hearing all the exciting stuff now, but just keep in mind how much things have changed in the conversations after PES. I think server meshing could be a little bit of the same. Anyways, folks, that's another one from me. We got another episode next week. As always, check out the podcast, swing by the videos, and possibly come join us on the stream for some chatting and playing. Otherwise, I'll catch y'all next week. Have a good one.